I watched Back to the Future Trilogy and I absolutely loved it. But I do know that I am years late in watching this trilogy. But I have to tell you, I have a very unique relationship with this trilogy. I'm going to share this in this video. But before that, I want to tell you that this is going to be the first episode of a series that I'm starting. It's going to be called as Laid Back Reviews. I mean, I'm not I'm not fixed on this title, but I think I'm going to call it this only. And the reason behind it, because I want to share my thoughts on certain movies in a very laid back fashion, in a very relaxed and a very normal, non-chaotic fashion, because I've seen a lot of videos on the internet, and I'm sure you must have seen a lot of those as well, that there's this new editing style, and I think it's getting old now, but there are a lot of snappy cuts, a lot of use of sound effects, very catchy sound effects, which doesn't really help your brain. I mean, the attention span is either ways getting shorter and shorter. But along with that, this snappy editing, this fast-paced editing is done to keep the viewer hooked, and it's not good for your mind at the end of the day. I even saw a video stating this fact, so I thought even I am, choosing to watch certain videos which are longer in length. So these videos that I'm going to make in this laid back review section are going to have, minimum editing as possible, and it will also help me as well to talk to the camera or talk talk about any subject uninterruptedly without having that cushioning of editing, that even if I screw up anything, I can edit it easily. So without that cushioning, am I able to speak freely? Am I able to keep my thoughts in a more compelling fashion, in a more conversational fashion? So it will be a good change for me as well. So I'm going to try that. And yeah, you have seen I have screwed up a couple of times, but I'll keep those screw ups in here. So yeah, let's start with the review. So the first thing that I really liked about the Back to the Future trilogy was that how connected all the three movies were. So Back to the Future trilogy tells just one story, a one messy time travel story divided into three different parts. And it's like the story is this huge story of time travel mess, but it has one singular heartbeat. And that really, and that's a very cool thought to, because it's a time travel story first of all. And there are a lot of times we have seen that when sequels are planned of any movies or any web series or any series or a TV show, there are a considerable amount of time jump, but here there is no problem with the time jump. And the reason behind it is again very simple, that they shot the second and third movie back to back. So after the success of the first movie was out in 1985 and it was a huge success, so they definitely planned sequels for that. But then during planning the sequels, I just read this fact that the second and third movie was supposed to be one single movie, but that story was too big, so they considered to divide that second movie into two movies, and they shot it back to back and they released it within a span of 1 year. So that's why the second and third movie feels really just one big movie, and because it was one big movie. But yeah, the thing I really liked about this trilogy was that how focused it was on telling just one big story of time travel mess, but it was divided into three different parts, and that entire feeling of this oneness is really evident in this series, and it is very evident in this trilogy. So I really appreciated that. Then the second thing that was that it had a lot of similar beats, a lot of bits that were in the first movie, then they were continued in the second movie, then it was again continued in the third movie. And the first thing that comes to my mind is Marty's relationship with his mother. Like in the first movie, he gets hit by something. He gets hit on his head, and then he passes out, and he wakes up in a bed, and the first thing he sees is his mother, Lauren, and he asks, and he says, I had a very bad dream. But then he sees his mother and he's in shock. Oh no, it wasn't a dream, it was a reality. So that happens in the first movie, that happens in the second movie, that happens in the third movie as well. So these kind of repeated bits, those were very nice to see. Then again, the bit with Biff's character in the first movie is the villain, second movie is the villain, in the third movie as well is the villain. Of course, his name is Tannen at that point in time, but still he is that villain figure. And again, there is a lot of chaos in all three movies. And if I rank these three movies according to the chaotic nature of it, the second movie will top the list. It is so chaotic, and I really embrace that chaoticness. And then I'll keep the first movie, it was again chaotic, but the third movie was the least chaotic of all three. I mean, it had a very simple story, and there was no back and forth in time a lot like we have in the second movie. In the second movie, they go into the future, then they go into the past again, and even when they are going to the past, they go to the same year in which they went to they went in the they went in the first movie. So that chaos meets chaos, and that adds on to chaos. So that's why the second movie, then the third movie, then the second movie, then the first movie, then the third movie, according to the chaotic nature of these movies. Then I want to talk about uh, how they in fact added a joke in the third movie, like in the first movie. And I felt that as well, like in the first movie they were kind of stretching the climax of the movie. Then I thought in the second movie as well they did the same thing, and in the third movie they in fact added a joke of that. They added a joke. I think Marty says that why we have to go to the that why we have to go down the wire every time, something like that. But the meaning was similar, that we stretch the narrative pretty much beyond acceptance in the climax. So yeah, that was a pretty funny move I think they did in the third movie, that they included a joke about that. Then if we talk according to the movies, I want to talk with the first movie. Obviously the first movie did make me feel very uncomfortable. Yes, and the uncomfortable nature of that movie came with the character of Lorraine. And I mean, when Marty goes into the past, he meets Lorraine, but then Lorraine falls for him, and I felt that was a very icky thing to even imagine. I mean, the premise of the movie was good, that he has to go to the past, then he has to make his father and mother fall in love with each other. But then he figures that his father was so, I mean, not his father, but his mother was so different. Then his mother actually falls for him, and that was such a crazy thing to even imagine. So in the first movie, I was like, come on, what's happening? But then at the end, towards the end, I was like, okay, it's just a movie. So yeah, that made me really uncomfortable about the first movie. But as I said, the premise was pretty interesting, that he has to go to I mean, he gets stuck in the past, then he has to make his father and mother meet each other. Then he has to make them fall in love, which seems a very impossible task, seeing how his father was. And it was very interesting to see how different his mother was as well. But then they really did a good job with the rules, like the rules, the exposition in such movies of time travel. The rules are the most important thing to accomplish, to state, and to make the audience understand that what the rules are of this time travel thing that we are going to do. And it was just the first movie, and it came back in 1985. That was again a good job, that they really did a very fine job to set the premise and set the rules of time travel. Then the next thing I want to talk about is to uh, you know the story has a very time bound attitude. Like when he's sent into the past, he has a limited amount of time before the lightning strikes that clock, so then he can go back to the future, I mean in the present. So that was a pretty good plot point as well, that this story is, the entire movie is about time travel, and in that story you are injecting a very crucial element of time bound things. So that gives, a very hasty environment, and that adds into the chaoticness of the movie. So that was again a very good job. Then they added then I really liked how Marty was very loving and very, in the caring sense for Doc, because at the end of the movie he writes a letter to Doc, but then he destroys the letter. But then Marty, has to come back to the future, come back to the past, and then he figures that, oh, Doc is really alive. So that was a very cool thing, that how caring and how loving Marty was towards Doc. So that relationship bond that was really established pretty well, and that definitely helps in the second and the third movie, because for Marty, Doc is everything, and for Doc, Marty is the only friend. So yeah, that was a pretty nice that they got there. And I really got the flavor of these movies, that it's not a serious time travel thing. It's fun, it's chaotic, and it's good to watch. And yeah, everything is fun in this movie. There are a lot of jokes. Then there's obviously the underlining theme is time travel, so that's interesting as well. Time bound thing, as I said, that makes it a very chaotic thing to add into it. So it was a pretty good thing. And then, as I said, the ending was a bit stretched. I felt it was a bit stretched, but then it was stretched again in the second movie, and the third movie they kind of made a joke about it. So if you talk about the second movie now, the second movie, as I said, was the most chaotic movie. I mean, they go to the future first, they go into the 2015, then they had to go back to 1955, 30 years, no, 60 years in the past. And and first I want to talk about the future. And the future that they imagined, I think the writers at that point in time really overestimated scientists, or you overestimated humans, that we'll have flying cars in 2015. That was a pretty fun thing to see. And I wonder, in 2015, the original writers, I mean the original creators of the movie, or the actors were like, oh, we imagined this to happen in 2015, but look, there is not a single car in the air. So that was a pretty fun thing to see, that they how overestimated the humans. But then they even had a callback to 1985, that they have a cafe there, and they even joke about it, that they have a cafe of 1985 theme, but they didn't do a very good job about it. So that was again a good thing there. And yeah, the bit they added, that they had to go back to 1955, and all the things with the alternate reality, that now Biff is actually a father of Marty. So that was again a cool change that they did. So therefore that added more into the chaos, that oh, and there's that shock value as well, that this is not the similar movie that we saw in the first movie. This is a very different story, and this actually deals not with time alone, but also with alternate reality, and they have to fix that alternate reality and go back into the first reality. So it was so chaotic in nature. As I said, it was the most chaotic movie. Then yeah, they added this dynamic of not running into each other. Like when they go to 1955, then at that point in time, they had to be the most cautious about one thing, that they shouldn't run into their counterparts of that timeline. So as I said, again, that added to the chaoticness of it, and I really loved that. And yeah, the ending a bit stretchy, but they ended on a pretty high note, because at the end I was very pumped, because Doc goes into the past, he gets hit by the lightning, and then we are like, oh, okay, we are doing this all over again. That now there is no point, there is no way Marty could go back to the future. But then again, the letter comes at the exact moment, at the exact time, and it's again Doc. He's the overlord, he's the god here. He again meddles with things. Then he sends this letter, and then Marty now has to go. Marty does go into the future, but then he has to find a way to bring back Doc, and then we start up the third movie. So that was again pretty good thing. But the third movie, I felt what they did with Doc's character, that Doc wanted to settle in that past era, that 70 years past era, that was not aligned perfectly with Doc's character, because Doc was the only one who was very sane and the most knowledgeable person regarding the time travel in the story that we have. So Doc saying that I want to stay in the past didn't really make sense, because definitely that will have some repercussions in the future and in the present. So that didn't really align pretty well with Doc's character. But then we can again justify this by saying that he was more happy in that era, maybe. But yeah, let's come back, and I say this was the least chaotic movie. And yeah, it was pretty good, because I could breathe, because I binge watched those movies. I watched the first, second, and the third movie, and the second movie was so chaotic, and the third movie was a simpler story, not going back and forth in time a lot. Again they used the tropes of the first movie, that the time machine can't work, so they can't really go travel in time. So that was again good. So it was like full circle, like the main element that used to travel in the first place in the first movie, then the first main obstacle was that the DeLorean was not working, the time machine was not working. Now you're using that same trope here. Okay, it was kind of a full circle thing, but it was nice. It was a simpler story, and it was enjoyable as well. It was a very good change of pace, because what they would do, either they could go to 2025, 2035, and what insane thing you could imagine about those things, because even now we can't imagine what things might be in 2035. Would we really see flying cars in the air? I don't know. So that is a very difficult job to even think of what the future might look like. You have to be insanely creative. But when you talk about the past, you have history written over it. You have a lot of artifacts from that era. So you can imagine, or you can stage things in a way that are reminiscing of that past that you are trying to show. So it was a good thing that they went 70 years in the past. And yeah, I knew that it was going to end, so I was just enjoying the movie. There was not a lot of things in this movie that you could point out and say, whoa, that was a good thing that they did there. But again, they stretched the climax so much. But yeah, at the end they took a dig at themselves. And we got to see the different side of Doc, which was a bit of refreshing to see. But as I said, the whole angle with the dog trying to stay in the past didn't really align with this character, I think. Please tell me in the comments what you think about that. But I think I'm going to stop here. And the video has been, and I've recorded this video for around 16 minutes now. And I think in the edit, it will come down to 10 minutes. So that might be the longest video that I made on this channel. So yeah, I'll try to make more of such videos which are longer in length. Hopefully I'll increase this length in the future videos. So please tell me in the comments what you think about such videos, and should I do more also, and should I do more of such videos where I'm just raw, I'm just, just talking to a camera and it's like one-on-one conversation. I'll keep the editing to the minimum amount as possible. So yeah, please tell me in the comments what you think about this, and please do share in the comments what are your thoughts on the Back to the Future trilogy. And if you haven't seen it, I'll say go watch it. It's a very fun set of 3 movies. So thank you so much for watching.